Here we go again with the feelings. Here we go again with the sensitivity. Here we go again with a university thinking that it is looking out for the best interest of the student athlete, but in reality, Texas Tech, they're not doing this kid any favors. I am actually surprised that this story's not receiving more attention from the mainstream media. Where is Jamel Hill? Where is the wicked wig of the woke? Where is the Talbert Swan? Here we have a classic case of mythical racism. This is one of those stories the media usually pounces on. If I didn't know any better, this seems like one of those stories the mainstream media would create when the supply of mythical racism is running low. Perhaps everyone in the media is distracted right now by Ja Morant and his fake gangster. I saw a headline this morning. The NBA is considering the possibility of suspending Ja Morant for 50 games. Now, I didn't look into it, not sure if this story has any validity to it, but if it does, that seems a bit excessive to me if it's true. But I am not distracted. I'm not like the media. I'm not distracted. I came across this story yesterday afternoon. Figured by this morning, the fake outrage would be at least at an 8 on the butt bongo scale. But there is this eerie silence right now with what happened with head coach Mark Adams at Texas Tech. Every generation thinks the generation coming up behind them is soft, coddled, pampered. There's actually some truth to that claim. My dad had it better growing up than his parents did. I had it a hell of a lot better growing up than my dad did. But the pampering that we're doing with this current generation of kids, it's different. I feel like millennials, my generation, we were the first to grow up in a true middle class. We had better amenities, better technology. However, I don't feel like millennials were emotionally pampered. These kids today, emotionally pampered. There is this increased awareness on the sensitivity. We are focused on the feelings of children and young adults. Teachers, they used to be allowed to discipline students. We had this teacher in high school, Mr. Lawless. That was his real name. This dude was a giant. He had this wooden paddle that he drilled holes into. I remember asking him one day my freshman year, "Why did you drill holes into your paddle?" He told me, "Because the air flowing through gives me added force when I'm beating your ass." He was not kidding either. If you fucked up in school, disrespected one of the female teachers or one of your female classmates, Lawless, he wasn't calling mommy and daddy. He wasn't taking you to the principal's office. He was taking you to his office where you entered with prime ass and left with red ass. It only took one, maybe two dudes to experience Mr. Lawless before everyone else got the message. Needless to say, he didn't have to use that wooden paddle very often. If kids started acting up, all he had to do was pull it out and the misbehavior stopped. That true story, though, that does not happen in schools today. We must consider our students' feelings. Young Sheldon might cry if his ass is beaten. That trauma will stick with him through adulthood. Yeah, that's the point. Coaches back then were given the ability to speak to players on the field however they wanted, and within reason, of course. There were certainly boundaries you didn't want coaches to cross, but today, they don't even have the boundaries to cross anymore. It seems like coaches have been silenced, they've been neutered when it comes to showing boys how to be men. Mark Adams has been coaching at Texas Tech since 2016. He was an assistant from 2016 to 2021, been the head coach for the last 2 years. Now, after leading Texas Tech to the Sweet 16 last season, they gave Mark Adams a contract extension, locked in for the next 4 years. At this point, though, that contract is meaningless because Mark Adams violated the most important woke commandment: thou shalt not commit mythical racism. Last week, Mark Adams was trying to give some life advice to one of his young players. There hasn't been much detail released as to what led up to this. From what I gathered, it seems like Mark Adams has struggled with this player throughout the season, getting him to listen. The player has been described as uncoachable. Now, I continue referring to him as the player because, his name hasn't been released publicly. Something happened either during practice or during a game where the player wasn't following the instructions of his coach. Mark Adams pulled him aside. He referenced advice given to us from the Bible. According to Jeff Goodman at the stadium, who personally asked Mark Adams what he said, Mark Adams said he told this kid, the Bible talks about how we all have bosses in life. We are all servants. I mean, that's the truth. Everyone has a boss. When I had a real job, I had one boss. I quit that job to pursue YouTube full time. Now I have thousands of bosses, you guys. If I don't keep you informed, if I don't entertain you with topics that you find interesting, you'll find someone else who will. Mark Adams was trying to teach this young man what life is like in the real world. Once you leave this protected utopia here at Woke U disguised as Texas Tech, you are going to be answering to someone. If you're not coachable, if you won't allow yourself to swallow your pride and listen to instruction, you're not going to survive. 20 years ago, this would be a non-story. Hell, 10 years ago, I doubt this would be a big deal. But like I said, we're living in the era of feelings. Ooh, feelings. Nothing more than feelings. Apparently, this player was triggered by the advice given by his coach. I normally don't like to make assumptions, but I'm going to assume this player chooses to identify as one of the thousands of marginalized groups because Mark Adams is now being accused of mythical racism. From what I can tell, this player, he was able to gather his composure after his emotions were triggered during this traumatizing speech, and he took his complaint to the administration at Texas Tech. Like I said, 20 years ago, if a young player complained about something like this to school administrators, they tell him to fuck off. Not today, though. No! This qualifies as racially insensitive language. We do not recognize this language. We only speak positivity at Woke U. Yeah. Well, the real world doesn't adhere to the standards of Woke U. Here in reality, we graduate from fuck you. My feelings are hurt. Fuck you. My emotions are triggered. Fuck you. Instead of Texas Tech telling this young man to toughen up, instead of them telling the kid he was overreacting, that his coach was just trying to help him, instead of having the back of their coach, maybe calling him in for a meeting with this player to get this misunderstanding settled in a safe space. I mean, this is Woke U. Everyone should be comfortable in a safe space, right? They don't call the coach. Texas Tech, they call this kid's parents. I spent 5.5 years in college to obtain a 4-year degree. You know how many times they called my parents? None. Matter of fact, back then, colleges, universities, they were teaching us not to rely on our parents. They were teaching you how to handle your own problems. Texas Tech athletic director Kobe Hocutt, he eventually reaches out to Mark Adams. He gave him a written reprimand, and I would assume he asked Mark Adams to address this misunderstanding with the team. I hate to assume again, but there hasn't been too much information released publicly because for some reason the mainstream media seems to be ignoring this story. Now, to his credit, Mark Adams, he did not apologize to the team when he addressed them. He didn't tell them what they wanted to hear. He told them what they needed to hear. He explained the point that he was trying to get across. He said he was informed by one of his other coaches along with the administration that what he said had bothered the player, and he wanted to make sure the point he was trying to make was being received. This had nothing to do with race. This was simply a coach coaching a player. Should be the end of story, right? Mark Adams given a written reprimand for this little misunderstanding. Everyone moves on, right? I guess Mark Adams' explanation wasn't enough for his sensitive players. Perhaps the punishment of a written reprimand wasn't enough either. Yesterday afternoon, Texas Tech, they announced they are suspending Mark Adams pending an investigation. Didn't they already investigate? Didn't they already speak with the supposed victim and his parents? Didn't they already speak with other coaches and players? What the hell else needs to be investigated? According to Texas Tech, they're investigating inappropriate, unacceptable, and racially insensitive comments from Mark Adams. What in the hell was racially insensitive about this? Because he told the kid everyone has a master? Ooh, master, that word is so triggering. Even the term masturbator brings tears to my emotional support shovel. That's why we call it wanker spanking. Basically, Mark Adams was suspended by Texas Tech for telling this kid the truth. I would imagine the Bible reference didn't help his case. As you guys know, the two biggest allergies to a wanker spanker, the truth and the Bible. Now, was the language Mark Adams used outdated? Sure. Oftentimes, though, we get so caught up in language, we lose sight of the message. The message Mark Adams gave this kid was true. We don't call them masters anymore, they're called bosses. When you accept money from someone else in exchange for your time and your labor, you're expected to do what you're told. I know that's a foreign concept, but it's reality. If you don't want to be in this situation, create your own job. But I hate to tell you, if you create your own job, you go from having one boss to having many bosses. That's not me complaining. I wouldn't trade my thousands of bosses for the old boss I had any day. The point is, no matter what you do, you always have a boss. You always have someone to answer to. That is the point Mark Adams was trying to make to this kid. But if anything, this kid proved Mark Adams' point. He's uncoachable. And Texas Tech allowed it to happen. Like I said, they are not doing this kid any favors, but give me your thoughts. Mark Adams tries doing his job, coaching a young man. It gets twisted into a case of mythical racism. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, kc_btl84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys later.